So the American cattle ranchers are totally fucked. And I wouldn't be laughing, but I know most of these guys voted for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's going to import 300,000 pounds of cheap beef from other countries so that they can bring the price of beef down, because the price of beef is ridiculous right now. I mean, some places ground beef is the same as minimum wage. That's insane. Like, to think that people have to work an hour for ground beef. So I understand why Trump's going to bring in all the foreign beef for lower prices. But at the same time, like, this is going to totally screw over the American ranchers, who are already have the lowest herd count that they've pretty much ever had because of how much droughts and how much climate change has been screwing up the weather and messing with the cattle ranchers. That's why we don't have enough, you know, heads of cattle to feed everybody, because climate change is wrecking everything. But nobody wants to talk about climate change, so we're just ignoring that completely. And Trump's just going to import 300,000 pounds of foreign beef, which I'd feel bad for these ranchers, but they voted for this guy. Like, this is the dude that they wanted, so they get what they asked for. But what sucks is it's going to destroy the American cattle industry, and all the mom and pop farms are going to be the ones that are hit the hardest, and they're the ones who are going to lose their farms to some mega corporation, and this will be the end of the family ranch. Glad you guys voted for Trump yet?
And it's just a big shot in the gut, right? Here we are doing exactly what we're supposed to. Then you have the government, who really should not be involved in our business at all, single-handedly. Imagine any other business where the president comes out and single-handedly says, you need to make 25% less starting immediately.
So let me get this right. Trump is allowing hundreds of thousands of metric tons of beef come into the United States so that it lowers meat prices, and ranchers end up making a lot less money. They actually get undercut. The same ranchers that voted for Donald Trump, the same ranchers that said Trump is my guy, are going to lose millions of dollars because Trump is importing cheap beef. Ranchers, guess what? You voted for this. Yeah. And I'd like to say I care, but no, you voted for this. Enjoy Trump. Enjoy Trump.
There's been a lot of news in the beef sector the last 3 or 4 weeks. Trump came out today and lifted a 90-day tariff on ground beef coming from Argentina. A tariff lift is on the first 300,000 pounds of ground beef coming in from Argentina, which is about 18 days worth of consumption, you know, on average, how much we sell in America and consume. So it is a decent little chunk, you know, that's a couple weeks worth of kill on the ground beef side. To price that beef at 25% under the market value for our, you know, domestically grown meat. And the biggest problem I see with importing meat is not only, you know, food safety. I believe American grown meat is the safest, best protein anybody consume in the world. It's a premium product, and, you know, right now the price of beef is high. I think it's a very dangerous game to import goods, you know, especially on the food side, that are grown in other countries. You know, those countries do not have the same safety regulations and standards as we do in America. Just in comparison, you know, the comparison is going to be imported meat versus our American meat when they're side by side in the store. Consumers going to have to make the decision to buy domestically grown meat. Everybody 5 years ago thought that lab grown meat was going to be the next thing. And, you know, the American consumer made the choice to not eat lab grown meat. Farmer and rancher is not going to give up on the American people. You know, they're going to continue to source and grow the cleanest, safest food that they can possibly grow. So, you know, it's up to the American consumer to stand behind the rancher and farmer. You can rest assured knowing, you know, that farmers and ranchers, no matter what that beef costs, you know, they're going to do everything they can to provide the highest quality product for the people. So.
Since the president wants to undercut American farmers who all voted for him and get cheap beef from Argentina, this is your reminder to buy locally raised beef and support your neighbors, since the government won't. And he would still vote for Trump again. He literally said it himself. And one of my favorite things to watch on TikTok right now is MAGA ranchers, MAGA farmers, MAGA in general, acting genuinely surprised that Trump is saying like fuck you to the domestic meat industry and choosing to import cheaper beef from Argentina instead. Because like we were all warned, right? Like you were literally warned. The Trump administration literally told us what he was going to do. The information was public. Let's run it back to Project 2025, where there were agricultural proposals that included downsizing the USDA, eliminating climate smart farming initiatives, cutting federal crop insurance subsidies, rolling back nutrition safety nets like SNAP. None of what we're seeing right now was exactly like this secret plan that they didn't plan on initiating until he got into office, right? It was all public information. And the bigger picture is that these deregulation and spending cuts prioritize industry profits over the long-term stability of American agriculture, right? While making our domestic food system even more vulnerable. All they care about is increasing the bottom line for the top 1%. And this was all publicly available information that could have really been useful to people before they voted. I guess it's just a shame that MAGA doesn't know how to read. I don't know. And even if they could, apparently reading the policy platform for the candidate that they voted for to lead our country was less important than owning the libs, I guess. So honestly, I don't feel bad for the people who are now complaining, especially when so many of them will turn around and say they wouldn't change their vote anyways, like that guy did. So I guess maybe that's something to reflect on when American farms are struggling and food becomes increasingly dependent on foreign imports, even more so. And God, whenever we are living through what the next brilliant solution is, 3D printed meat, imported beef, fucking horse meat, I don't know. Because if the priority was always owning the libs instead of protecting your own economic interests, then I guess you can say goodbye to the farm and hello to the good old fashioned 9-to-5 life like the rest of us. Good luck with that too. And I guess if anyone on here knows any farmers that are local to North Georgia or Ship that can prove they didn't vote for Donald Trump, DM me. Thanks.
Whew. For many ranchers, the cattle business is more than making money, right? It's a way of life passed down through generation. Where in this video, we'll look at the reaction of some MAGA ranchers who are reportedly frustrated by the possibility of more imported beef entering the US market, and why some say cheaper foreign beef could put pressure on American cattle producers. Let's watch some of these clips. Please don't forget to like my video, subscribe to my channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Alright guys, let's get into it.
I thought the most interesting part of the tweet was that the 90-day tariff lift is in efforts to give the US cattle producer time to rebuild the cattle herd. And I really, I'm not quite sure who's talking to Trump, who's in his ear, but by importing foreign beef and creating, volatility in the domestic cattle market, it really doesn't feel like the long-term way to rebuild the cattle herd. So he might want to revise who's talking to him and who's giving him input. But the name of the game is the Packers have the infrastructure and the resources to, source all this meat to the entire country. So sadly, the way the cattle industry is right now, the Packers need us, but we also need the Packers. So I think there's common ground. I think change can be made, but, ultimately it's a dollars and cents game, and, they're going to do what they got to do. The farmer and rancher is going to do what they got to do to, continue their livelihood. So ultimately the president and his administration, they can say and do whatever they want. Ultimately the American people and the consumers, the people purchasing, they have the power, they have the final say. And they can be the ones that push back a little bit and, show that premium products are worth a premium price.
These ranchers and farmers on here getting to ERUPT. That question, who did you vote for, is tearing their ass up. I've been seeing so many ranchers on my For You page saying that they're close to my area or in my area selling that beef. And when I open the comments, and they're being very avoidant of that question or being really snippy with people, boo, I don't want it no more. I'll find somebody else. I don't want the shit no more. It is that serious. It is. I'm not going to buy from a rancher if he voted or if she voted, if they voted red. I'm not. Oh well. Go market to somebody else. I don't want it. Because when I voted for your interest, right? When I voted to ensure you would be good and supported and protected. And what did you do? Exactly. So no, I will wait until the right rancher comes across my For You page, and goddamn, I might buy the whole goddamn cow. I wanted an eighth. Nope. I will get 2 or 3 deep freezers for the right rancher. I will. It is that serious. It is very much that serious. And this is not just limited to ranchers and farmers. If there's any business that I'm supporting and it comes out that they voted red, I'm not going to buy from them either. And it doesn't matter how much I like what I was buying before, I will stop at a drop of a dime.
North Carolina, let's be clear about what's happening. Trump's plan to import 300 metric tons of foreign beef is being sold as a way to lower grocery prices. But you don't put America first by putting American farmers second. Over 80% of the beef we eat is already produced right here in the United States. A temporary flood of foreign beef isn't going to magically make grocery prices 25% cheaper. What it can do is put downward pressure on the prices our farmers receive while major meat packers and retail chains pocket the savings. And here in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District, 394 cattle farms could feel the impact. We have nearly 4,000 farmers across this district, and family farms are already under tremendous pressure. North Carolina farm bankruptcies have surged, with filings rising dramatically since the beginning of 2025. So what is our solution? Instead of undercutting American farmers with foreign imports, we should invest in American agriculture, strengthen our domestic beef supply chain, support family farms and ranchers, increase competition among meat packers, and make sure farmers receive a fair price for the food that they produce. We all want lower grocery prices, but we cannot sacrifice the farmers who feed our families to get there. I'm fighting for North Carolina farmers, family farms, and long-term American food security.
President Trump caused waves in the beef market again. There are 2 major stories that we're going to hit on today, and the timing is worth looking into. This morning, President Trump announced that in the United States will allow up to 300,000 metric tons of ground beef product to enter in the country over the next 90 days without the normal out-of-quota tariff. He says the imported beef will be sold at 25% below current market prices, with the goal of bringing down grocery prices for consumers. Then at 3 p.m. today, the USDA released the Cattle on Feed report, and the numbers tell us something pretty important about the domestic cattle supply. On August 1st, there's 11.1 million head of cattle on feed in the United States, which is about 2% up from last year. But here's where the numbers really started catching my attention. July placements were down 1.42 million, which is down 11% from last year, and the lowest July placement numbers in the history of the report. Markings were also down 7% at about 1.62 million head. So we have a cattle industry that is dealing with extremely tight supplies, and we're seeing fewer cattle entering feedlots. And then on the same day, we're talking about bringing more beef into the country. Now, does this mean that President Trump intentionally timed the announcement before the cattle on feed to push prices lower? We don't have evidence to say that, but we do know what happened to the market. After the announcement, live and feeder cattle futures both dropped sharply. At one point, October live cattle were down about 470, and September cattle feeder were down about 660. And this is where it gets complicated. For consumers, increasing imports could potentially add more ground beef into the marketplace and create a downward pressure for prices. But if you do the math, 300,000 metric tons only comes out to an average of 8.3 to 11.8 days of beef supply based on the average American beef consumption numbers. So does this really lower prices? I doubt it, but for producers, adding imported beef into the market where domestic cattle supplies are already tight could put pressure on value of cattle and potentially reduce the incentive to retain heifers and rebuild the herds. And if we're being honest, that's the long-term question. If lower cattle prices slow herd expansions, could that make the domestic supply problem last even longer? that's the part of the story that we really need to watch, because this isn't simply a Trump and ranchers and consumer situation. This is about a supply, demand, prices, and seeing what happens when you try to solve a short-term availability problem for an industry that takes years to rebuild.
This is a quick reality check, okay? What the Trump administration just did with the importation of beef is good for them politically and bad for American ranchers, okay? You're not going to see a lot of ranchers coming out and saying, no, we want this beef from other places. It defeats the purpose of what the tariffs were supposed to be about, and it shows that this is just about political expedience, okay? And it's going to make beef ultimately more expensive. Why? Because you can't play with markets like this. So you say you're putting on tariffs to protect us, and we got to deal with the short-term problems. Prices start going up. Now you want to remove the tariffs because you don't want to deal with the short-term problems, Mr. Trump. You want to get an easy little quick exit for yourself. And you're going to do it at the cost of American ranchers who you say you care about most. Look, the American people are right about what's wrong. We have to do something about prices. He is doing the opposite. Period. Anyone saying anything else? Bullshit.
People are getting all excited about Trump's new deal, bringing in 300,000 metric tons of ground beef into the United States. The government doesn't get involved when the price is too low. Consumers definitely don't complain as well. So when your ground beef was $3, $4, even $5, you weren't complaining at all, and the government wasn't stepping in. So now that it's high and we're profiting in the ranch business, the government wants to get involved and find a way to make it cheaper. So they're going to bring in a bunch of cheap Argentina and beef. I try to put myself in Donald Trump's shoes, where he's got a bunch of people complaining about beef prices, high prices of this, high prices of that. I don't like government getting involved in things, and I think it's about time that ranchers are able to profit well. It's been an industry that's been extremely tough. So I would lean more towards annoyance with the interference of the government, and we should let the ranchers succeed and be able to profit as much as they can during this time. From a consumer's point of view, I bet a lot of you are very happy and would like to eat beef at a cheaper price. So that's kind of my take on it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before we get into today's topic, please don't forget to like my video, subscribe to my channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Imagine spending years building a cattle business, supporting a political movement that promised to put American workers and producers first, and then watching cheaper foreign beef enter the American market. For some ranchers, that can feel like a serious contradiction, and that is why this conversation is getting attention. You know, the beef industry is complicated. American consumers want lower grocery price, while American ranchers need the price high enough to cover feed, land, fuel, equipment, labor, and other costs. So when cheaper imported beef enter the market, consumer might see it as an opportunity for lower prices, but the domestic producer may see more competition and pressure on their livelihood. And this creates an uncomfortable situation for some Trump supporters. If you campaign on American first, how do you explain policy that some American ranchers believe could make it harder for them to compete? How? But let's also be realistic. Imported beef doesn't automatically mean American ranchers are being pushed out of business. And trade policy is only one factor affecting beef price, right? Supply, drought, cattle number, feed costs, transportation, and consumer demand all matters. There is also an important distinction between beef imported from countries that already have established trade relationship with the US, and a policy specifically designed to hurt American ranchers. So before we declare that Trump has betrayed rural Americans, we also need to look at exactly what policy was introduced, where the beef is coming from, and who actually benefits from it. But politically, the tension is fascinating, because some ranchers may be asking, did we vote for cheaper beef for consumers, or did we vote to protect American producer? And those two goals don't always, put points in the same direction. Those two goals doesn't point in the same direction always. What do you think? What do you guys think? Should America prioritize cheaper beef for consumers or strong protection for American ranchers? Even if that means higher price, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and please don't forget to like my video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on your notification for more political and economic and social commentary and about the things that is happening around the world. Once again, thanks for watching, and see you in my next video. Bye. Love ya. Mwah.